Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, DevOps for Marketing, Increasing Velocity, Improving Focus. Your speakers for today are Josh Koenig, co-founder here at Pantheon, along with our guest speaker, Eric Peterson, Marketing Systems Engineering Manager at Tableau. Just a few housekeeping items to go over before we start. Please make sure you submit any questions you have during the presentation in the question window or tweet them at GetPantheon. We'll answer as many of these questions as we can during the Q&A portion of today's presentation. Also, this webinar will be recorded, and the recording will be made available to everyone next week. I'd now like to turn it over to Josh and Eric.
Thanks, Atusa. So, hi. Thanks for joining us on this interesting and exciting topic. I think we're not the only people in the universe talking about this, but we're among the first sort of pushing this notion towards business units like marketing. So, just by brief way of introduction, my perspective on this is really born of the experience of trying to work myself out of the many hats one wears as the co-founder of a startup. So going through the experience of having a very, very small organization that literally fits in one room to having divisions and departments and people who are professionally focused on one area of the business or another, and how you can apply sort of modern organizational thinking like DevOps to the problems that crop up outside of the traditional areas of like engineering and looking at business problems through that lens. How about you, Eric?
Yeah, thanks for having me on the webinar today. So the lens that I'm going to be approaching today's sort of discussion is I work at Tableau, software, data visualization, business intelligence company, very fast growing. I started there about 5 years ago, and the lens that I'm going to come at this discussion is like the processes and the technologies that we use to scale out and increase the velocity of the marketing organization from a technical perspective. I am kind of a developer by trade, and I will be kind of giving my perspective from there. So I feel like with that, we have this title of DevOps for Marketing, and you might be thinking, hey, marketing, what are they actually doing over there? Is it very technical? And I don't blame you for having that kind of perspective. Marketing's kind of come a long way since the very beginning. You might think of things in sort of a Mad Men-esque type advertising sort of way, where you have an idea, you put an ad out there in a newspaper or on television, and then you maybe you actually do like a mailing list campaign where you literally have people in a room licking stamps, sending out mailers to people in their mailboxes. Like, things have come a long way since then. There's a lot less guesswork. We have more data. We have more technology. I wish that we included it in our talk, but if you do a Google search for marketing technology landscape, the number of platforms and technologies that marketers use today has exploded, even in just the past few years. There's like various companies and offerings across like advertising and promotion, content and experience, social relationships, commerce and sales, data management. Like, marketers are spending more on IT than IT people are. And it's only growing, and it's only making things better for marketers, but also the prospects that they're trying to reach out to.
And I think that that's really the kind of the key opportunity here to talk about. As you have, as Eric mentioned, marketing organizations on the whole are spending more on technology than IT organizations. And there's a lot of benefits that we gain from modern marketing technology. I think in particular, to sort of contrast with the Mad Men-esque stereotype, there's this famous, possibly apocryphal, but sounds about right quote from an ad executive saying, well, we know that 50% of television advertising has absolutely no effect, but the problem is we don't know which 50%. And it's a challenge traditionally in that industry that has really changed rapidly as marketing has become a technical profession, and the tools by which marketing is delivered have become enriched with so much data. So you really have the ability to run this build, measure, learn cycle where you create a campaign, you put it in the field, you're able to figure out what worked about it, what didn't, what audiences you reached, how they reacted, and you can turn those learnings into the next campaign. Which is something that really wasn't possible with the immediacy and scale that even just 10 years ago. Previously, heretofore, marketing organization would need to conduct focus groups. You'd have like you see sometimes in these presidential elections, like the people twisting the dials in response to a speech or something like that. Those are all still valid methods that people run, but I think our ability to actually pull data, quantitative data at scale from our audience is new, and that's one of the most exciting things that all this technology offers. But it's not really, making the most of this and embracing DevOps on the marketing side isn't just about this technology. Because DevOps, if we're going to define it, is a cultural and professional movement focused on how we build and operate high-velocity organizations born from the experience of its practitioners. And I think that the build, measure, learn cycle is really part of being a high-velocity organization. And you might ask yourself, am I part of a high-velocity organization or not? Do I want to be? That's a really important question to consider. But the benefit of pursuing high velocity as an organization is you can operate that build, measure, learn cycle more rapidly than your competition. That's probably the best way to get ahead, because if you can launch more campaigns, learn more quickly, and measure them, and then learn more quickly to improve your campaigns, you'll essentially have evolution on your side. When if you can pull 5 or 10 iterations out where your competition is doing 2 or 3, the chances are very good that you'll get better results. So DevOps is really about how do we make that happen? How do we enable an organization of professionals, people who are working together, to have a culture that allows them to operate at that kind of velocity. And importantly, DevOps is really about the experience of the people who are doing this. It's about the lived experience of people on the front lines executing and making things happen in the real world. Technology alone doesn't make a high-velocity organization. We're talking about technology quite a bit in this presentation, and it's one of the drivers for a lot of this, but it's not the technology so much as how people use it. And if you're in marketing, the high likelihood is that when it comes to implementing any technology or running any technical campaign, you have partners and stakeholders that you need to pair with. You may need to work with people in your product and engineering organization if you're working at a company that has a technology-oriented product, or even just a product department in general. You may need to work with your IT organization, which is usually kind of a different organization with a different bent to it. You probably have some vendors who are external software providers, external tools, and then you may have agencies, which are, I would define as external service providers, so people who are providing you services. And we run into all kinds of challenges. Marketing runs into all kinds of challenges working with these other entities, sometimes because their incentives aren't always perfectly aligned. So for instance, a product or engineering organization's first and primary goal is rightly like shipping. They want to get things to market. They want to produce. They want to put stuff out there. That's what they're there to do. IT is really concerned about stability and security. They want to keep the lights on. They want to make sure nobody gets hurt. An external vendor is really concerned with closing a deal and then with their own internal roadmap. So you need to make sure that what they're selling is what you need, because depending, you don't go chasing waterfalls, so to speak. And an external service provider is really concerned internally. Their imperative is resource utilization. They need to keep their people busy and productive so that they can drive their own bottom line. And so if you find yourself in a situation where those incentives of your partners are kind of pushing them away from what you need as a marketing organization, you can run into the kind of famous clashing and tension that can happen as you need to partner across these organizations.
So taking all of those sort of diverging incentives into account, I think we can kind of boil down how you actually implement a DevOps culture at your organization to something kind of as simple as this. If you want to DevOps, you need to empower those most accountable for changes being made to implement those changes themselves. So if you are on this call and you are in a traditional IT role, you need to recognize that marketing is accountable for its goals, which may be different from your goals, and you need to empower them to be able to execute on those goals. And same thing if you are an agency or if you are in product development, same kind of thing. And likewise, if you're a marketer on the call, you are also responsible for, perhaps if you're in like a marketing operations type of role, you are responsible for making your fellow marketers, empowering them to execute on their own individual goals toward the greater goal of lead generation or market penetration, what have you. So it's kind of two sides of the same coin. Empower those, be empowered. With great power comes great responsibility.
And that's kind of one of the things that makes it difficult because, when responsibility isn't cleanly, assigned between different organizational silos, that's where that's where a lot of sort of negative company policies can come from a lot of times. And so you have to make peace. In order for a DevOps culture to work, divisions that are often at odds because of these different incentives need to work together. I mean, it's kind of a cliche in larger, more mature organizations that marketing and IT don't get along. And that cliche is something that we have to confront and overcome if we want to do our best work together. Because we really do have to work together. And so here, I'm just going to call it, for everyone on the call, everyone on the internet, we're declaring world peace between marketing and IT. It's happened. There was some shuttle diplomacy that went on early this morning. And it's a done deal. We're all just going to start working together now. So pretty much, I think we're good to go, right, Eric?
Yeah. I mean, so I think Josh's point. Josh is being a little bit tongue in cheek here, but the gist, like the feeling you should come away with is spot on. Like this isn't like a pledge that you make. From the CMO to the CIO, this is DevOps is born of the experiences of its practitioners. These are like people, line of business people, developers, what have you, who are actually those individuals need to reach across the silos, come together and work together and find those common goals. This isn't just like top down.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was being tongue in cheek. I mean, it certainly helps implementing a DevOps culture if you have sponsorship at the executive level, but that's not going to make it happen. This really actually isn't something that can be negotiated between two C-level people or even VPs in a company. They can sponsor it, they can champion it and so forth, but DevOps culture really emerges from the people who are making it happen day to day, learning to work together. And so it is important to recognize that having a mindset of creating peace and creating cooperation, but it's not actually like you can get President Carter to come in and just like make it happen by sharing some pizzas and driving around. You actually have to work at it day to day with your colleagues, and that takes real work. So let's talk about how that happens. We've kind of framed this whole idea, hopefully given everyone a sense of what DevOps is about and what it takes to make it happen within business units like marketing. But let's get into some specifics, because I think that helps make it clearer and really makes it tangible what you have to do in order to see these kind of results. So I have an example from a customer of Pantheon and a company Pantheon uses called Admiral Media. And they have this interesting journey of liberating the website from the product. So Admiral Media is the global leader in retargeting. This is a super important thing if you do marketing on the internet. You don't just want to blast your banner ads all over the place and try to buy every keyword. You want to try to start to segment your audience and target them specifically. And it makes it much more effective and both effective in results and cost effective to deliver online ads to the right sorts of people as they browse the web. If you ever feel like certain online advertisers or retailers are, quote, following you around on the internet, they're probably using some retargeting technology. It's pretty much par for the course now. But that wasn't the case, 4 or 5 years ago when they were first getting started. This was relatively new stuff. They were a scrappy startup. They were super agile. And so they were building a SaaS product so that marketers could log in to a dashboard and see their retargeting campaigns and define how their audience. And they built their website right into their dashboard. So literally the content that the public would come to learn about if they were trying to research Admiral was embedded inside the same code base as people who were logging in as customers of Admiral. And that was probably the right choice for them to get started because they got online really quickly, they had a beautiful website, it was super fast, and it was all good. The problem was that that's kind of like a Franken-site if you think about it. It's this weird combination of an actual SaaS tool, their retargeting dashboard, and then which is for logged-in users only, and then all this publicly available content, which is how to read about Admiral, what are their services, how much does it cost, etc. And very quickly, what happened as they started to find success is they got into this really unfortunate tug of war between the marketing organization and the engineers who were working on the product itself, because marketing would have to say, hey, we want to put up some new copy. That would turn into a task that would trade off directly against the ability for an engineer to fix a bug, because they needed to deploy every time something would want to change. And the truth is that features and bugs would often win out. Marketing would be frustrated. Engineers would feel bad because they kind of can't help but notice that they're letting their colleagues down, but they still have to make those priority calls. And it's not a good situation for anyone when you have to prioritize, two core competencies within a business against each other because there's only one way to deploy information to the internet. And so what they were able to do was initiate a mitosis process, where they basically took all the content and all the design from their public website, they hired an agency, they picked an open source content management system, they found a platform provider in Pantheon that gave them confidence that they could run this themselves, and they basically, emerged from the product as a separate entity, a separate website on a separate infrastructure that they could log in, they could edit the content anytime they wanted because they had a CMS, but also they had their own deployment pipeline. So if they wanted to adjust their design, or if they wanted to deploy new features, or if they wanted to innovate how they themselves were using tagging and marketing automation on their own website, they were able to do that independently of what their core product and engineering organization was doing. And that was a really powerful and liberating thing for them, because when the marketing organization was able to take complete ownership of the website, they kind of turned into ninjas. And that really helped drive the growth of the business. And everyone was very happy about that after the fact. There was a lot of nervousness going into it because it was sort of a new thing, and can marketing handle it? But it turns out that, yes, they can. And they did a great job with it and helped grow the business. And then, the engineers were able to do their work and focus on the most important stuff to develop the product. So it was a win all around. And the lesson is, empower your marketing organization. The marketing organization should have ownership of the public-facing website. Public-facing website is the single most important thing for marketing for any modern company, and the marketing organization needs to be empowered and accountable for it to do what it needs to do. If they're constantly blocked by another organization, it's just never going to be good for the business, and we should all recognize that we're on the same page and give people the tools they need to succeed.
I kind of want to dovetail off of this idea that the public-facing website is the most important piece of kind of a marketing organization stack by talking a little bit about Tableau's website, Tableau.com, and how we went on this sort of journey to finding sort of the right balance and partnerships between ourselves and IT. A little bit of background, Tableau.com is a very large website. The things that marketing are accountable for, I guess, are like lead generation from my perspective. So we need to make sure that leads are flowing well from our website, which is tightly integrated with our marketing operations system, and make sure that those leads are high quality. And the way we do that, our website's sort of like a lead generation machine. In order to execute on that sort of mission quickly, we need to be able to fine-tune and tweak the way that we collect information on the website. We need to make sure the website's super fast, and we need to make sure that we're constantly upping our game on the user experience front. And in order to do that, we have a development team within marketing working on the website constantly. When I started, Tableau was just sort of coming out of this phase of desktop software. We only did desktop downloads that you'd like literally install something on your machine and do analysis that way. But about the time that I started, we started pivoting into this SaaS product called Tableau Public. It's free. You download, quick install, do your analysis, and you can publish your visualizations to Tableau Public and then share those visualizations anywhere else on the internet like you would a YouTube video. So because we started off in desktop software, we didn't have that problem that Adroll did where the website and the product were the same thing. Instead, we had this different sort of issue where we had an IT organization who controlled the infrastructure of the website and also the infrastructure of the SaaS product. And obviously, if you're going to build a SaaS product, you need to be able to iterate very quickly, do deploys very easily without regressions, very high uptime, that sort of things. Things that IT is kind of good at, like very stable, very secure. And so the IT team, the operations team, built out a very nice process for our SaaS sort of product engineering team. I might kind of make it akin to this type of car, very nice, very sleek, And you'd think that the sort of skills and knowledge that they gained in building out that infrastructure for the product engineering team would apply to the website team and marketing, but it's kind of like a cobbler's shoes scenario where we just kind of got the crumbs. We got something a little bit more like this. Not exactly what we were looking for, you know, because it goes back to the issue of alignment between IT and marketing. IT has different goals than marketing. We want to get more leads, higher quality leads, and we need to be able to iterate on the website quickly to do so. IT is more worried about security skills, like security and stability. So the type of deployment flow that they built out for us was like this crazy shell script that almost re-implemented Git in like Perl and MySQL, and it's like, cool, I can get code up to the production servers, but do the production servers actually match staging? Am I able to like pull up a staging environment and change my, like test my latest changes? That wasn't really possible. In fact, like we started building out continuous integration style like tests, automated tests for our website, because like the basic thing we need to make sure of is our leads making it from the website to our marketing automation system. And running those tests was painful. We would integrate maybe once a month. We would deploy maybe once a month, and things would inevitably go wrong. So we recognize that we need to move quickly if we're going to move at a high-velocity organization, and we sort of just sat down with our partners in operations, and we said, hey, we need to move more quickly than you guys are currently able to service us. Here are our goals. Here are the types of features that we need. We want one-click spin up a test environment. The test environment should be, it should match prod, like the same versions of PHP and MySQL should be there as are on prod, and the deployment process should be the same from our local to the staging as it is from staging to live. And we went to them with that sort of feature list, and they said, cool, we can build that for you. Maybe it looks a little bit like this bike, but we don't really have the resources for that right now, but even if we got those resources, maybe it would take us like a year to get all of the features that you want and get it right. And so we sort of recognized that IT wasn't really able to fulfill what we needed. They recognized that, and they said, cool, let's go to a vendor. And we found this vendor, Pantheon, that sort of provided almost everything that we needed in our tool set to do what we needed to do. And then on the flip side, IT was then able to redirect those resources that were going to go to building out these features into actually making the product better. So it was like a win-win for everyone. And the kind of the takeaway there is that, like, although we highlighted all of the differences between the different groups, those four sort of horsemen that I like to talk about, not all of them are actually evil and slow-moving. Like, you need to you need to really like forge those relationships between the groups, make sure that they're good, and come to consensus about what the company needs in order to move in the direction the entire company needs to move in.
Cool. I'm going to talk a little bit about, since we're talking about our own companies and our own experiences, I'll talk a little bit about Pantheon and how we went from sort of, garagey startup to having a real marketing organization that's starting to become technical, and how that's sort of created a greater awareness inside the company about the need to partner to get things done when it comes to driving business goals. So we're Pantheon, we're a website management platform. You all know that. We have a nice website. Our website runs on our website management platform, and I and my co-founders had a background in doing this professionally and implementing CMSs. So we are a SaaS company, but because we were a website management platform company and we had this experience, we weren't in that admiral position of having put everything together into one bucket. Like we saw that way ahead of time, and of course we didn't do that. But we were still a really small organization. This actually isn't a picture of us. It's our friends at CoreOS when they were super early on. But it was this kind of garage startup sort of feel where everyone's fulfilling multiple roles and things are happening quickly. It's all about minimum viable everything because you're just getting off the ground and you're trying to get things to market and you're trying to see whether or not you have something that works. And luckily for us, we did have something that worked, and so we started to grow. And when we started to grow, even though we had the foresight to separate the technology of the website from the technology of our product, we still ended up back in this kind of annoying tug-of-war situation. because we didn't separate, we didn't have the opportunity early on, and I don't know if we really would have, but it's in hindsight, it felt like we didn't have the opportunity to build an organization that was self-sufficient. We had technological, we had differences in our technology, but we had still this kind of like siloed knowledge about how the technology worked. Like the first implementation of our website, in addition to being much less well designed, also was like sort of arcane in terms of how you would make it do anything. If you wanted to post a blog under a certain category, like it just wasn't really well thought out or user friendly, because we built it for ourselves as quickly as possible because we were just getting things off the ground. And so there was all this siloed tribal knowledge in between not even just different departments, but between different founders even. And that was painful because it meant that we had this weird ping pong effect. Trying to get anything done required us to have one person ask another person, and that person would say, okay, I'll get to that next week. And then they would do it next week, and then they would say, okay, is this what you wanted? And they would say, oh, great, you got that done. I can't look at it right now because I'm just busy with something else. They would look at it 2 days later and say, oh, wait, this isn't exactly right. And everyone's been through this type of process. And it's just super frustrating because it goes very, very slowly when you're constantly lobbing a task back and forth between different groups or between different people, and you aren't actually focused on working on it together. And so what we really realized we had to do was break down those silos and start to build the complete skill set within the marketing organization to manage the website and own the website. And then beyond that, we realized that as we were implementing marketing automation and better business intelligence systems, we needed to build the skills to actually manage all of those systems within a business unit as well. So not only did we go through the process, I mean, literally, we went through every phase of this. We went from doing it all ourselves, to hiring an agency to get us a great redesign and a great relaunch, to sort of kickstart that process, to realizing that over the long haul, the agency, we needed something that was more like a retainer model because we sort of just needed someone who's around whenever. I mean, we didn't have anybody we could hire at the time, so going to like a different person to get someone who can be on retainer to work on our website, to realizing that beyond the website, when you think bigger about business intelligence, we need an even larger group that is cross-functional. So we built this quote-unquote tiger team. This is a kind of a scrummy terminology for when you build an A team, basically, and you say, okay, we need somebody from marketing, somebody from business operations, somebody from product, because a lot of data flows from the product, and a couple of engineers, because this is actually going to be a real technical challenge. It's going to be, we're building a new data pipeline, and build this tiger team that, rather than ping-ponging everything back and forth, would actually work together on a day-to-day basis, like daily stand-ups, so that there was no time lost and no focus lost as they started to execute on these things. And we're seeing really, really wonderful results now, both with a fully empowered marketing organization and our ability to start to drive more and more business insights and decision making through data, which is a really wonderful thing to do. Early days in a startup, you go on gut a lot, but it's nice to be able to confirm your gut or create problems with your gut feelings based on data. But this is a slow process. This took us years, and we still have a long way to go. And so I think that it's important to remember that implementing a DevOps culture doesn't happen overnight. It does start somewhere, but it doesn't happen in a quarter or even a year. I think it's an ongoing journey because it does involve a lot of lessons learned, because organizational change does require people to get experience and comfortability working together, and because it takes time to build this consensus and for peace to break out, so to speak. One of the things I will say is that once you start to see the win from implementing a DevOps culture, the momentum can pick up because success does breed success. But don't get frustrated if your first few forays into this don't work at all or don't feel like they were home runs. I think we definitely had some early attempts to improve things that were failures and some that felt a lot more like a sacrifice bunt than a home run. But you just keep at it and iterating, and that's, the build, measure, learn cycle applies to just trying to get this culture going as well as the work that you're going to do in the field. So, create a hypothesis, test that hypothesis, look at what happened, do a retrospective, do better next time, and you will get there, I promise.
Yeah, so I feel like we've been talking a lot about websites. Josh, you just started talking about data, which is a very nice segue into what I'm about to talk about. It's like we planned it. So if you haven't even started on this process, or maybe you're just kind of in the doldrums where you don't have this type of iterative DevOpsy culture at all, like it might seem overwhelming, very daunting to even go on this journey. And I want to highlight, kind of take a step back and look at an entire industry rather than just looking at an individual piece of technology or individual unit within an organization. But if we look at an entire industry, if we look at business intelligence as a whole, we get the same kind of thing. Business intelligence has been around for decades and decades, and it's when it first started, it was a super frustrating process. If you are a business user, maybe you're in finance, maybe you're in marketing, and you have a question about some data that you have, in the old way of doing it, you would create this issue in a ticket tracker, and that issue would go over the wall to someone in IT, someone who actually knows how to connect to a database or knows how to query the database in exactly the right way. They're part of this priesthood of people who have access to the data. And the ticket would go over, they would triage it and wait a couple of weeks. Eventually they would answer your request, like how many people signed up for this webinar. They would generate a report for you, and they would pass that report back over the wall to you in sort of this report factory-esque process. And it's very slow. It takes many weeks. Maybe you get the report back and you're like, okay, well, that's interesting. I have this many people on the webinar. How many of them came from this industry? You would have a follow-up question very naturally. And you'd have to go through the whole process again. The weeks-long process, maybe it has to go through change management because they needed to update an index on the database or something like that. And so it is very frustrating at the very beginning of the cycle. But over the years, and this is something that Tableau especially has focused on, we've kind of moved to this self-service business intelligence model, something that Tableau touts quite a bit, where rather than going over the wall, we are actually empowering business users to directly access the data that they're already familiar with, visualize it and run analysis on their own and come to their own conclusions without really having to go through this long cycle going through ticket management. And actually Gartner has sort of validated this just this year. They've said that we've reached this inflection point where the old traditional BI model of top-down report factories is kind of on the way out, and the new hotness, the thing that people are actually wanting and moving toward is this self-service business intelligence kind of model. And so I want to highlight that because it deals very, very closely in this DevOps culture where it goes back to the two sides of the coin, right? You need to be empowered and you need to empower those who are accountable. And so once you are empowered, you have this sort of creativity, this freedom. You're able to unleash all the curiosity and creativity you had to get done what you need to get done, what you're actually accountable for. And that's sort of, if you feel like it's impossible, just look at business intelligence over the decades it's been around. It's turning around, and so you too, in your individual business unit, can, through an iterative process, make your way to a sort of DevOps Zen of sorts.
So to sum up again, I'll take this quote, which is from the DevOps Kung Fu presentation from Chef. It's a great video to see the CTO Chef Adam Jacob talk through this, but their definition, which I subscribe to: DevOps, a cultural and professional movement focused on how we build and operate high-velocity organizations born from the experience of its practitioners. And I'm just going to do a little word blackout here. It's cultural, it's professional, it's a way that we work as professionals, and it's about how we build and operate organizations. So the takeaway here, even though I've got circuit boards in the background, is technology is a catalyst and a side effect, but DevOps is made of people. It's people. And it delivers business value. All the code in the world doesn't matter if you're not delivering business value, whether that's leads for your team, ultimately revenue for your business, happiness for your customers, whatever it is. Focusing on how you're working together to deliver value to the business, which is ultimately about making other people able to meet their goals. Keeping a focus on that, and then thinking, how can we operate together to make this more efficient? How can we break out of silos? How can we reduce cycle time? How can we put people who are accountable for goals, give them the responsibility for actually delivering on those goals? And that's it. That's our presentation. So hopefully an introduction to DevOps thinking for marketing and business units. And I think we have some questions from the webinar. So Atusa, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, so please feel free to submit whatever questions you guys have in the next 20 minutes so we can get those answered. Our first question is there data to support that high velocity is superior?
Is there data to support that high velocity is superior? I don't know of a, in the sense of a peer-reviewed study that I could cite for this. I think the way that you would support that thesis is by looking at who market leaders are and whether or not you would define them as high-velocity or low-velocity organizations. There are plenty of low-velocity organizations that are very profitable, but typically when those organizations that are low velocity they're in a holding pattern. They're stuck on one end of the innovator's dilemma, and so they're basically just riding a profitability curve down towards the point where their market share will erode and they'll be taken over by someone else. You can go back into business history a little bit and say, okay, let's look at the automotive industry. A lot of the core thinking behind DevOps and other stuff was actually born out of Kaizen, which is the Toyota lean manufacturing process, and the methodologies that they were able to use to better organize their factories and their workers and their product designers to produce better cars more efficiently in a more time-effective manner versus the sort of low-velocity organizations of General Motors, which were working on these decades-long product cycles, and they that did very well for them when they were the only game in town in the 1950s and 60s, but in the 1970s and 80s they saw their market share erode precipitously, and it ended up importing a lot of these lean manufacturing and constant improvement methods to kind of reboot their processes. I think for a more modern context, you can look at the rise of A/B testing. I think there's probably a fair bit of, again, not a peer-reviewed study, but there's lots of case studies from organizations like Optimizely and others that show that the ability to quickly iterate and test campaigns in the market, to test changes in the market, to show with data which have better results, and then execute on that is clearly going to deliver superior results to not changing things or only being able to change things monthly or quarterly or even longer. Eric, do you have any sense on that?
I feel like the only thing I would add is that velocity isn't you're not doing velocity at the expense of quality. And velocity might be relative for your organization, right? It's if you're going to move quickly, you also don't want to break things, but maybe the velocity that you need to achieve for your particular industry or company is different from the sort of unicorn startups that are coming out of Silicon Valley. It's all a little bit relative.
It is a little bit relative. I actually want to, I'm going to go back on the slides to our great BML cycle. So, and I think that the underlying hypothesis of velocity for its own sake is not good. It is not in and of itself. And actually, you might, people talk about velocity because it's exciting, and I think it's as an adjective or a noun, it creates a sense of progress. But if you think about what makes this cycle work, operating this cycle at a higher velocity, meaning doing more revolutions per quarter, if you want to put it that way, simply means you're giving yourself more opportunities to learn. And while it's quite possible that if you don't seize on those opportunities, or if you're not able to do so safely, high velocity could shake your organization apart and have negative results, I find it pretty credible to say that if I get 5 chances to learn something and improve, and my competition only gets 1, then over time, over however many quarters we go on, I should be able to improve my process, improve my product, improve my message, whatever it is, and beat my competition.
Okay, we're going to take another question here, and that is, how do I know when to bring an agency in?
That's a good question. I think that we sort of define agencies as professionals, external service organizations. So usually, you're contracting with them to do work. Agencies are great to bring in when there are skills that you need that you don't have in-house. And I think in particular, if you're looking to start something new or you're looking to instigate some kind of change. So if you're looking, a classic example of engaging an agency is around like a redesign or a relaunch, right? So that's a good time. That's a great time to bring in an agency. Even if you have in-house design, you can bring in an agency just to make sure you get some fresh thinking and some fresh eyes on it. I think if you're going to implement a new technology, that might be a good time to engage an agency if they have expertise. If you're looking to build a new practice within your organization, it might be a good time to engage an agency. There are agencies that specialize in helping you implement DevOps for a tech team. I don't know if there are any agencies yet that specialize in DevOps for marketing, but there's like a more general term like agile marketing, and I know that there are consulting agencies that specialize in those things. So I think agencies work well as either sort of like augmenting your team with more horsepower and maybe some skills that they don't have, or even more importantly, when you're looking to do something really new, when you're looking to introduce a change agent or an expert around something that you don't have previous experience with. Eric, do you have a perspective on when you would want to engage an agency?
Yeah, I think I pretty much agree with where you were going there. So to rewind the clock on the story I was telling about Tableau.com a little bit, before we had any developers within the marketing organization, the website was built and maintained and run by an agency because they didn't have anyone in-house to do it, but they needed it. So I definitely agree. Doing it up front for something new is a totally appropriate time to bring in an agency. On the flip side, we've tried engaging agencies for various projects more recently now that we have a very mature sort of technology organization within marketing, and it hasn't worked out quite as well. So I would say it's probably earlier in that iteration toward DevOps.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Another case would be like I don't know about you, but and we're not big enough to do this, but I've talked with colleagues and friends who work in really big organizations where there's not like a marketing department, there's like marketing organizations for different product lines and different divisions. And I know that one of the things they'll use agencies for is they'll actually just engage an agency around, like if a campaign itself is complex enough, you might bring in an agency to operate, it's kind of one of those things where if you're going to work with an agency, you want to really give them they need to be empowered to deliver on their results, and I think that's kind of what you're speaking to there. I've certainly had this experience too. When you already have a lot of process and practice, and you've got a fully functioning dev team inside your marketing organization, bringing in an agency to kind of be a sidecar to that isn't super empowering for them. And so that can sometimes lead to some frustration. Versus, I would contrast that with if you find a place that or a person who really does know that they're coming in to do staff augmentation. I'm coming in to be an extra pair of arms and legs for you. I'll bang out the CSS or I'll make sure the tests pass or whatever. That can have some that's a different kind of engagement than a creative agency engagement though.
Totally. Yeah, I never looked at it that way with. I feel like maybe we failed in empowering agencies that we brought on recently, and we could better empower them.
Right, next question is, how can an agency bring this approach to their clients?
That's a really good question. So I think that this is an example of a one of the things that helps agencies a lot is if they really develop, not only from an execution standpoint, but also from a presentation and honestly a marketing standpoint, how they put forth their practice. So one of the things that agencies often struggle with is kind of being creative and strategic, but often getting used as staff augmentation and arms and legs. And so one of the things that can help, I'll work back around to the specific question, I promise. One of the things that I think can help is by presenting the creative value or the strategic value to the client as part of the reason to get engaged. Whether that's something that's more on the technical side, like we specifically focus on, high performance and high availability. That's like a hard set of technical challenges, and making sure people know that that's why they're hiring you, so that they'll defer to your expertise on that. On the flip side, I think agencies that specialize in a way of working and a way of bringing sort of agile processes and cross-functional organization to their clients, as long as their clients know that they're buying that and they are signing up for it, then I think you can have a lot of success. What I would caution against is having clients that are not interested in being high-velocity organizations and don't have any, either, they don't necessarily have to have a background in this, but aren't interested in embracing, because this takes work, like you talked about. Like, it takes many iterations to really get this working. I think a lot of times where an agency can run into trouble is they're trying to bring all this awesome new practice stuff to their clients when their clients didn't really buy that. That wasn't the job that they were hiring the agency to do. And then what that can lead to is like a bunch of kind of mismanaged expectations and kind of hard feelings around the fact that you didn't find a good way to work together. So I would say that if you as an agency want to bring this to your clients, you need to sell it. You need to promote the value, and you need to ensure that in the same way as you would promote the value of something as rudimentary as SEO or responsive design, you get the clients on board with the fact that this is worth it for them to do. You let them know, set expectations early and upfront about what it will take for them to do this, because this is not something they can just outsource, right? If you're really going to try to, kickstart a DevOps culture within an organization, that actually means the organization has to be engaged. So making sure that you spend a lot of time promoting that value and then executing on that value, really work at building the relationships with the stakeholders inside the organization that you need to make that happen, and being really clear and upfront about whether you feel like you're getting traction or not, so that there's not just this like, oh, we tried Agile and it didn't work kind of moment at the end, which is kind of a bummer.
All right, on the client side of things, we have a question, and that is, if we brought an agency for a new technology and the technology brings good results, should we consider building it in-house as opposed to continue paying the agency?
Eric, do you want to take that question?
Sure. I feel like it's going to depend on the situation, right? Like, if the agency built out this technology stack and it's working at the pace that you need it to work, then there's like nothing that you need to change necessarily. But if it's working and you feel like it's a prototype and you could really, really grow that, then it might be time to reconsider. Maybe you continue working with the agency to iterate on it more and more and get the whatever value you're getting out of it increasing. Otherwise, you should stop and consider what are the resources that I would actually need to make this more successful, and can I afford that? And is it so? The other thing to keep in mind is, like, is the thing that they built for you part of your core mission as an organization? And if so, maybe it's time to consider bringing that in-house. Maybe not. I don't know. Josh, any thoughts on that?
Well, I have one thought, but I was going to ask you a question. Were you there at Tableau when they made the transition from sort of the agency doing all the website to doing it internally?
I came just after. It was literally a D5 to D6 migration, and then I joined maybe like a month after.
Got it. I'm guessing that they probably hired you because they realized that they needed more resources internally to actually handle that responsibility.
Exactly.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, I think it's one of those, to Eric's point, initially I would just reinforce, if what you have is working as well as you need it to work, don't change something that's delivering what you need it to deliver, unless you have a strong sense that you could be delivering more, or it's not quite delivering enough, or you feel like you're not able to really get what you want out of it, like the promise is there. The example I think for me is we were for a long time outsourcing our marketing automation work, and I think that it was that case where it worked in that it was up and running, and we were able to send emails and capture leads and get some basic business intelligence as to what was happening. But it wasn't working in that we always felt like there was this like long lag time to get anything done. And also, a lot of stuff would get lost in translation with our agency. And when we made the decision to move that stuff in-house, it didn't actually solve all the problems because it turned out that it was a lot of work, and so the cycle times could still be slow, and it turned out that it was very complicated, and things would still get lost in translation. But I think what we found was our ability to kind of get a 360-degree view of what was going on. I mean, Tusa, you were actually more directly involved in this than I was.
Yeah, I will insert myself, and I second everything Josh says. It was great having an agency because you have someone to, or outsourcing it because you have someone to consult and, sometimes someone to blame when things go wrong and to assist you. But when we brought it in-house, it was great because we just had more insight, and it forced us to sort of learn our product better ourselves and find our, kind of get on our feet. But then you actually find you have more problems and more stuff to deal with. And I think our healthy balance is now, we have so much in-house, but we do occasionally, consult said agency just to it gives a different perspective, and it gets another pair of eyes on it. And agencies have seen all different types of websites and have dealt with all different types of clients and levels of experience. So still having that kind of in our back pocket has been great. And even, the occasional, our marketing ops team goes on vacation, you have a fallback and everything doesn't fall apart or stop. But it is empowering to be able to bring that in-house, and as a marketing person to be able to really own our website, own the operations behind it, and feel like you have a bigger part of the business than I think marketing has had historically.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good insight to the specific question. One thing to consider is, as your next step, maybe you take ownership over the technology that's being successful so that you can understand it more fully, iterate on it more quickly, etc., but retain obviously a relationship with the agency during that transition, but on an ongoing basis, looking at that agency just as a consulting resource, expertise, bouncing questions off someone. A lot of times that doesn't take that much time, so it doesn't cost that much money. And I will say, like, being able to get someone who really, just has much more experience than you with something for an hour or two to just whiteboard out an idea or tell you what they're seeing happening out there in the field, that can, save you from going down a lot of blind alleys and give you a lot of great insight.
Absolutely. We do have time for one more question, and that is, help me out. How does DevOps differ from past buzzwordy management / leadership trends? Is DevOps just a new black?
So, let's be real talk. It's totally a buzzword, right? And this is why, but it, like, people who are invested in DevOps get really, really mad when people misuse the term. And I actually think, like, we got a little bit, I think we're doing it justice in this sense because we understand, or we practice this internally as best we can, and we follow the industry. I think that almost anything that starts to deliver value in business really quickly becomes co-opted and turned into. So Pantheon offices in Chinatown and San Francisco, and like anything that's really good, there's really quickly going to be like a cheap knock version of it out there, and people who just look to grab, SEO, and and then people will satirize this on Twitter. One of my favorite Twitter humorous personalities calls himself a DevOps thought lord. So it's both is the short answer. But there's real there, and I would say, and then there's a lot of play because it's connected to a lot of narratives in Silicon Valley, and that's very hot right now. That's an area of the economy people are interested in. It's connected to software, which is quote unquote eating the world. It's about how we sort of can iterate faster than ever in this world where we're just moving bits around and things are digital. But the underpinnings of DevOps go and in very creative ways about how manufacturing organizations worked. And I would recommend a book recommendation for anyone who wants to learn more about DevOps, and maybe like you can pass this book around your office if you're trying to get other people on the DevOps train. There's a book called The Phoenix Project, which is a delightful, light read piece of business fiction about how DevOps helped save a company. And it's got all the things in there. There's like kind of the villainous marketing person who's always asking for too much too fast. And there's the security guy who just doesn't get it and wants to stop everything from happening. And there's the poor, beleaguered IT organization that is just struggling to keep the lights on. And the one IT sysadmin who knows how everything works. It's got all these kind of familiar tropes if you've done this. But it walks through the process of how organizational change might happen, and also introduces a lot of the sort of deeper roots of DevOps thought. And it's a great way to kind of introduce the concept in a light sort of fictional way within an organization, which can be fun. I don't know, Eric, do you have any thoughts on the reality or unreality of DevOps as a thing?
No, I think you totally nailed it. Like, this is DevOps for marketing. I'm a marketer. DevOps for marketing is a very good title from a marketing perspective. Like, it's important to recognize that we're totally co-opting this sort of buzz to get people sort of thinking about it, but it's real. Like we've seen like 4 examples here of like things that have happened that have led to success for organizations. So it's like there's value to be gained out of what we're doing here. We're not just like doing buzz for buzz's sake.
Alrighty, looks like we've hit our time. Thank you all so much for watching. If you have any questions or feedback, please visit our website where you'll find a contact us page, and we'll put you in touch with the best member of our team. Have a great week, everyone.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.